Hey folks, how you all doing? So today I'm doing another rankings video. This is going to be the 16 studio albums. Yes, 16 by English soft rock, disco, pop king Leo Sayer. As of the moment as I'm recording this, Leo Sayer has been pretty sick. He's been in hospital in Australia. He's lived in Australia for nearly 20 years now. He's naturalised Australian. He's been in hospital for the last three and a half weeks. He's had prostate, I think liver and kidney damage as well. I don't know whether that's all diabetes related or whether he has some other issue in his family, but I know there's a history of cancer in his family. So he's had to cancel, I'm not saying it is cancer, he's had to cancel his autumn Christmas UK European tour for recovery. He's not saying exactly what the health issues are, but hope he gets well soon, because he is a great little artist, and he's been around what 50 odd years now, so he's still rocking and rolling and getting them up and boogieing at his shows. So get well soon, Leo. Great artist. So let's go, we'll rank them from my least favourite, which is number 16, through to my ultimate favourite. I'll give them a score out of 10, let you know what I think of them. To be honest, there's not a Leo Sayer album I dislike, and I think from the list there's 10, the top 10 I actually love in one way, form or another. So I'll just quickly go through the albums really quickly and let you know what I think of them and why they are ranked where they are ranked. So to start off with, I have Northern Songs. This is his most recent album, 16th album, most recent album, released in 2022. It is a 19-track covers album of Beatles songs. There you can see that. He's reinvented these songs to some degree. They don't sound the same as the Beatles. He slowed a lot of them right down. A couple of them, one of my favourite songs on here, Nowhere Man, that's pretty much got like a reggae vibe to it. Hey Jude's got a bit of a country vibe to it. I Feel Fine, that's got almost like a disco-y dance type feel to it. But it's just a really good album. I think the only one I don't like on this is Revolution. Revolution should be sung one way, and that's with heavy guitars like the John Lennon B-side version. Strawberry Fields Forever isn't that great neither, but the rest of these songs on here are still pretty good. He changes them up and makes them his own, so they're not actual just straight flat out covers of Beatles songs. So some of them have quite good arrangements to them, and the others are interesting the way he's dealt with them. This one comes in at 6 out of 10, so it is passable. Number 15 on my list, I have his 11th album. This is 1990s Cool Touch. All the songs on here were co-written with Alan Tarney. He wrote quite a bit for the Hollies, but he also wrote a hell of a lot for Cliff Richard, from the late 70s right through the 1980s and into the early 90s. So this album has a Cliff Richard vibe happening. Not there's anything wrong with the Cliff Richard vibe happening. His songs are innocent pop songs, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But there's just some of these songs I like and some I don't. There's just too much of a muchness of Alan Tarney and Cliff Richard to really elevate this one much higher than where I put it. Paperback Town, yeah, the 4th single on here, that's a really good song. That has a great social conscience vibe to it, about, you know, people who have nothing, and, you know, make it like him, but make it like Leo Sayer, and then you know, you remember where you've come from, basically. You remember your roots. So it has a real social conscience vibe. This one comes in at 6 out of 10 also. At number 14 on my list, Have You Ever Been in Love? This was his 10th studio album, believe it or not, in 1983. At least half this album is made up of covers. Stevie Wonder's Until You Come Back to Me, Don Gibson's Sea of Heartbreak, the Beach Boys' Darling, Bobby V's Have You Ever Been in Love, which was actually on the previous album released previously to this one too, which is really strange. It was on 2 albums in a row. And the Crickets, More Than I Can Say, which was the big hit off this album. Well, so was Have You Ever Been in Love, if you don't count it as a hit from the last album. It's a fairly good light pop album, so half originals, half covers. It's a fairly good album, nice easily listening stuff. 6.5 out of 10. Number 13 on my list, I have his 15th studio album. This one's entitled Selfie and was released in 2019. As the title suggests, Selfie. It was written and produced, everything was written by Leo Sayer, it was produced by Leo Sayer, and he played all the instruments that are on this album. It's a decent collection of soft rockers. It's very reflective in nature. The songs are very reflective. He was hitting 70 years of age when this album came out, so you know, he's starting to look back like a lot of the singers do when they get to a certain age, and this is no different. But it's not done cliched or saccharine. It's very thoughtful lyrics on this, so fairly good album. 6.5 out of 10. At number 12 on my list, I have Another Year. This was his 3rd studio album, was released in 1975. Mainly ballads on here. Sounds a lot like Elton John in places. You can certainly hear that Elton John would have made good versions of these songs. Moonlightin', the track Moonlightin', that's always struck me as being right up Billy Joel's alley, and I'm not saying that's a problem with it. I'm just saying that's how I perceived that song to sound like and who I could envision singing it really well. That is actually the most up-tempo track on this album, so it shows you how mellow and downbeat the album is. Russ Ballard plays on here, and I think he may have written some of these songs. Could be wrong, but I think I'm pretty well right. But yeah, 6.8 out of 10. At number 11 on my list, I have Silverbird. This was his debut album from 1973. Solid soft rock album. There's nothing that I dislike on this album. Half of it is ballads. Would have preferred a few more rockers than ballads, especially when he was younger. As he gets older, I do prefer his ballads, but when he was younger, I prefer him because he had a rock voice and he sounded a lot like Roger Daltrey at times. Big hit on here was The Show Must Go On, but my favourites are the falsetto sung Why Is Everybody Going Home. Just love his falsetto on that song. Great opening rocker as well with Innocent Bystander along with The Obvious. The Show Must Go On. 7 out of 10. At number 10 on my list, I have his 13th studio album, Don't Wait Until Tomorrow. This was released in 2008. You guys know that I'm not a big fan of covers albums by what I've written on or said on previous videos, but this is actually a covers album. It's a covers album of his own songs. He's reinvented them with different melodies and harmonies and sound. A lot of them have been slowed down into a jazz form, like very mellow, slow jazz, and they do work really well. There's a few songs on here that you listen to them, and I'm a big fan, as you can tell, that you listen to him and first time and you go, what the hell is that song? And you go, oh my god, that's whatever, you know. So he's reinvented the wheel, and it actually worked really, really well. Even with bigger hits like One Man Band, The Show Must Go On, You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, and Orchard Road, Giving It All Away, for example. He has changed the Long Tall Glasses. He's changed these. These are really, really well done. I just didn't expect them to be as good as they are. And that's the sign of a good artist, when you can reinvent something and make it sound totally fresh and new. Great stuff. 7.5 out of 10 for me. At number 9 on my list, I have his self-titled 1978 album. This is his 6th studio album. 5 covers on here. One track was co-written with Ray Parker Jr. Phil Collins actually covered one track, I Can't Stop Loving You, back in the early 2000s and had a huge US top 10 hit with it. There's some elements of disco on here, but that's the era, that's the period, 1978, and as we know, he was into a lot of dance type songs and pseudo disco type songs, but it is predominantly a soft rock album. Good album, but not his best. 7 out of 10. Next up on the list, number 8, I have his 7th studio album entitled Here. This album has Rod Stewart and the Faces written all over it. It has that rough, ragged, bluesy rock type feel, and it really works. I'm a huge fan of the Faces, mind you, and Rod Stewart. So to compare something to Rod and the Faces is incredible, and this does. It fits in really well alongside any of their early albums from the early 70s. There's a couple of ballads, raunchy rockers. There's an R&B cover of the She Lights Oh Girl, which is really good. It's a solid album, consistent rock and roll in my opinion. 7.5 out of 10. At number 7 on my list, I have World Radio. This was his 9th studio album. It was released in 1982. Several covers on here. One was written by the Brothers Gibb for him, which was the opening track, Heart Stop Beating in Time. Lots of ballads on here. A few disco-esque type vibey songs, like soft disco, not doof pump pump disco, you know. And they actually break up the ballads really well. Again, there's nothing to dislike on here, as there is with 90% of his albums. I think there's probably 3 or 4 tracks in his whole career that I don't like. So yeah, just a really good album. Probably half this album I love, the other half I like. So yeah, really good album. 7.8 out of 10 for me. Next up, his 8th album, Living in a Fantasy. This was released in 1980. All the songs were written again by Alan Tarney and Leo Sayer. And again, there's that distinct Cliff Richard vibe to it. That's not a bad thing. Again, like the other album that I mentioned earlier, it's an observation. It's a solid collection of well-crafted, radio-friendly pop songs, which is what Cliff Richard's always had, thanks to Alan Tarney and many other writers. 7.8 out of 10 again. At number 5 on my list, we go back to the future again. His 12th studio album, released in 2005, Voices in My Head. It's been 15 years since Cool Touch, which was the one that ranked second last, which was released in 1990. Yeah, and this one 2005. So he's had a 15-year break. In that time, he's got married. He's sorted out his legal business issues in the UK. He's moved to, he's relocated to Australia, got citizenship, etc., etc. So huge upheaval. He's got on with it, moved on, recording another album. It is a really good album. There's a noticeable change in his vocal tones on this album, but then, you know, he's got that bit older. He hasn't recorded for 15 years. It's probably a register deeper, but it's still a strong collection of songs, and his voice is still really good. Lots of soft rock on here. All the songs on here are about life, love, you know, hopes and dreams, and having a positive attitude. And obviously he felt that when he left the UK and came to Australia to make, you know, a brand new start in his life, a new chapter of his life. And he hasn't looked back since. Another 7.8 out of 10 album for me. Number 4 on my list, fast forward another decade, 2015. This was his 14th studio album, Restless Years. Excellent album of soft rock. He either does soft rock, pop, disco type sounds, or ballads. That's just Leo Sayer. What you get is what you get with Leo Sayer. There's nothing, you know, experimental or eclectic. He is Leo Sayer. Some of these songs sound so different vocally, it's hard to believe it's a Leo Sayer album. All the melodies and everything, it just doesn't sound like Leo Sayer. He's really, I don't know, there's something about this album, it just doesn't sound like Leo Sayer. I guess you could say it's like Paul McCartney with his Driving Rain album. It really doesn't sound like Paul McCartney, but yet it is Paul McCartney, and it's the same with this one. An excellent, excellent late career album, in my opinion. I think of the 13 tracks, I probably love 8 of these. The notable track I do want to mention is Competing with DJ. So that year in the Australian ARIA Music Awards, which is the Australian version of the Grammys or the Brits, Best Live Act in Australia award was won by a DJ. You know, one of those DJ guys. So not even a musician or a band, it was a DJ. So he wrote this song sort of tongue-in-cheek, sarcastically, saying, you know, the DJs have taken over his livelihood. You know, where once was a live band is now a console, and you know, but they don't know the art of music because they've never actually created anything, and putting him out of a job, etc, etc. And there's a bit of a twist at the end of the song where he's saying, oh, I think I can hear a loop or a sample. Looks like the DJ's paying me now. So it's quite a clever way of looking at things, turn the negative back into a positive again. But that's Leo Sayer. He's never negative. He's always a positive guy. And you know, these songs really, really good late career songs, in my opinion. So we get to the top 3 now. Number 3, we have his 5th studio album, 1977's Thunder in My Heart. Disco album. It is pretty much all out a disco album. There's a few elements of soft rock woven throughout the album, but it is a disco album. Unlike a lot of disco music, this has not aged badly. It has aged really well. I guess that's the difference between a guy who's just come in the industry to make money off a disco era and a seasoned songwriter, and that's what he's done. Interestingly, the title track only peaked at number 22 on the UK charts. It was one of only 2 songs, I think, in the 1970s that didn't make the top 10 for Leo Sayer in the UK. The other was Raining in My Heart. So you got Thunder in My Heart and Raining in My Heart, both missed the top 10. I guess he should stop singing about weather and sing about other things if he wanted top 10 hits. But anyway, that song, the title track, was remixed 2006, I think I've got written here, 2006, and sent it back to number 1 on the UK charts, or sent it to number 1 on the UK charts. That was a bit of a revival for Leo Sayer. This one comes in at 8.1 out of 10. Great album, even though there is a disco vibe to it. Number 2 on my list, Just a Boy. This was his 2nd studio album. It was released in 1974. This one contains Silverbird, his debut, didn't quite have all the elements of a Leo Sayer album. This has all the elements here. It's the Leo Sayer sound. You know, songs like Train, One Man Band, Giving It All Away, and Long Tall Glasses. Interesting to note that for those who don't know, One Man Band and Giving It All Away were originally written for Roger Daltrey, and they were released by Roger Daltrey the year before this album was released on his self-titled debut solo album. So if you listen to both of those, if you listen to Leo Sayer and Roger Daltrey's vocals on One Man Band and Giving It All Away, they sound remarkably similar. So it just goes to show how much of a great singer Leo Sayer is, if it's difficult to pick his voice between himself and Roger Daltrey. So yeah, great album, 8.5 out of 10. Finally, my number 1 Leo Sayer album is probably the obvious choice. It was his biggest selling song. It was multi-platinum here in Australia, a lot of countries in Europe and the UK, and I think it did very well in the US as well at the time. This is his fourth studio album. It was released in 1976 and it is Endless Flight. Couple of covers on this album. He does cover Reflections, which was an old Supreme song from back in the 1960s, and the big hit When I Need You, which was actually written by Albert Hammond and Carol Bayer Sager. This album contains 3 top 10 hits. The number 1, When I Need You, You Make Me Feel Like Dancing, and How Much Love. You Make Me Feel Like Dancing got to number 1. Oh, sorry, it got to number 2 in the UK. When I Need You got to number 1, and How Much Love got to number 10. So 3 huge top 10 hits on here. All 3 of those songs sum up the entire vibe of this album. This is an actual masterclass of pop writing, in my opinion. Though there's not much difference between this, Just a Boy, and the next couple of albums, but this just pips them, for me anyway. And it's just an excellent album. So if you want a Leo Sayer album to check out, you can either get a decent compilation or get this one, and this one is the one that you would probably really need alongside a compilation to complete what you need for Leo Sayer. Anyway, guys, sorry to bore you for the last 21, almost 22 minutes now. Let me know in the comments section below. Are you a Leo Sayer fan? What do you think of Leo Sayer? Have I got balls actually coming out and doing an albums ranking of Leo Sayer in the vinyl community? Don't know. Guess time will tell and time will see with the amount of views I get and comments section below. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Stay safe. Take care. All for now. Catch you around and bye.